the weather balloon, natural weather phenomena, and military flares. These three things have been used by governments around the world to explain away civilian UFO sightings. The Phoenix Lights were said to be military flares. The DC Lights were said to be natural weather phenomena. And in Roswell, New Mexico, this was supposedly a weather balloon. But if we go back in time to 1561, to a city that had never recorded a single instance of bizarre weather phenomena, before the invention of military flares or weather balloons, we'll see that something unique happened. Something strange. Something that still today cannot be explained.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that nation, and at the solicitation of Japan, was still in conversation with its government and its emperor, looking toward the maintenance of peace in the Pacific.
Shortly after Pearl Harbor, on February 24th, 1942, just over the ocean waters of Long Beach, California, what was said to be a saucer-shaped object appeared in the night sky and began slowly moving up the coastline before hovering just off the shore of Santa Monica, where the U.S. military lit this object up with lights and fired over 1,000 anti-aircraft rounds at it. After initially submitting a press release stating that the event was in fact an attack on a UFO, the Army would quickly change their story, restating that they actually attacked a weather balloon due to heightened nerves because of Pearl Harbor, which they were unsuccessful in their attempts to bring the weather balloon down. An estimated 20,000 people were witness to this event, which became known as the Battle of Los Angeles. Throughout the majority of 1977, in the Brazilian city of Colares, Para, countless UFOs were reported by hundreds of witnesses who claimed that the UFOs allegedly fired light beams at civilians, causing injuries and sucking blood from over 400 victims. The events were so terrifying that the city's mayor requested help from the Brazilian Air Force, which the Brazilian government responded by launching Operation Prato, a military operation carried out by the Brazilian Air Force to determine what the UFOs were and to bring peace to the region. By 1978, the objects in the sky stopped appearing. But 20 years later, the commander of Operation Prato would come forward and release these photos while stating the event was authentic. A year later, he would be dead, in which he supposedly hung himself with his own belt. On November 29, 1989, in Belgium, 3 different groups of witnesses and 3 separate groups of police officers reported a massive triangular object flying at low altitude without making a sound. During this sighting, there was free sharing of information as the Belgian populace tracked this craft as it moved from the town of Liege to the border of the Netherlands and Germany. And these sightings would continue, peaking on the night of March 30th, 1990, in which several triangular objects were not only photographed and tracked on radar, but chased by 2 Belgian Air Force F-16s, who were able to achieve radar lock on 3 occasions. But each time, the triangular-shaped craft changed position and speed so rapidly that the lock was broken. In fact, during the first radar lock, the unidentified craft accelerated from 240 kilometers per hour to over 1,770 kilometers per hour, while changing altitude from 2,700 meters to 1,500 meters, then up to 3,350 meters, before descending to almost ground level. The most compelling of these maneuvers was the first descent of more than 1,100 meters, which took less than 2 seconds, as such a maneuver would be fatal to a human pilot. In total, this event was witnessed by an estimated 13,500 people on the ground, in which 2,600 of those witnesses would file written statements describing in detail what they had seen. But after 20 years of insisting that these triangular UFO photos were legitimate, eventually the gentleman who claimed to have taken both these photos came forth to say both were hoaxes, while UPenn Belgian skeptic Mark Hallett would later write an essay claiming that the entire event could be explained away by nothing more than mass delusion. But to this day, the Belgian Air Force stands by their claims. On the evening of July 14, 2001, thousands of Carteret, New Jersey eyewitnesses photographed and filmed several unexplained lights that appeared in the night sky.
Many people have come forward to say they saw flickering golden lights over Arthur Kill near Carteret last night. The police have been unable to identify the source, and Newark airport officials say there were no unusual flight patterns in the area at the time. Oh, it's caused quite a debate here on the Eyewitness Newsroom.
It has. You
really
notice they were
has.
flying in a V formation, and you know my theory. Birds with flashlights.
Yeah, that's plausible. Very plausible.
That is so good.
Let me check that out.
That is really...
Birds with
That's the first one.
flashlights.
Come on, Ritter, you got a good explanation.
Planes, airplanes. Gotta be.
No.
The airport said they weren't airplanes.
Well, maybe a different airport.
Okay, we got it. They're yelling.
To this day, no official explanation has ever been given. But the most important mass UFO sighting that you may have never heard about occurred in Chicago, Illinois on November 7th, 2006.
UFO HARE story the Chicago Tribune exclusively broke on New Year's Day is garnering attention around the world. Okay, so what did it look like again for the folks who saw it?
Dark gray metallic saucer shapes, no lights, it was stationary in the sky, and it was there for some minutes. And then when it disappeared, it just streaked through the clouds with such energy that it broke a blue hole in the overcast. The pilots on that plane, they opened the windscreen and snapped some pictures.
Somebody observed a flying disc about 1,000 feet above the Charlie 17. Anything over there?
We saw it a half hour ago.
Who saw it?
Whole bunch of us over at the Charlie Aykroyd.
Really?
The witnesses who originally came to you are all seasoned, credible professionals like pilots.
They're pilots, they're senior managers, they're mechanics, and when they go to the government to try to get information, they get stonewalled. They are very truthful about what they're saying. So there really is this universal feeling that the government knows a lot more than it's willing to tell.
You know what I like the most about the O'Hare incident? Is its simplicity. At around 4:15 p.m., a disc suddenly shows up hovering above Charlie Concourse. It's seen by ground crew, passengers, and pilots who all claim to shoot photos and videos of the object. After hanging around for just a little bit, the object ascends to the sky and rips a hole through the cloud cover. And on that day, the cloud cover was at 8,000 feet. So this thing covered a lot of ground in 0 time. Shortly after this event, the ground crew, passengers, and pilots all approach United Airlines to try to tell them what happened. United turns around and immediately tells the public nothing happened, and the FAA follows suit. The problem is something did happen. They say the absence of evidence is not evidence. That's bullshit, especially in cases like this. Something happened at O'Hare. Shortly after the O'Hare story broke on the news, the search for footage and photos was on. Yet as time passed, nothing surfaced. We know there was an attempted cover-up by United Airlines and the FAA, as they denied the incident occurred until their story was blown apart by leaked control tower audio. So the question remains, where is the footage? While there were a few video clips that surfaced on YouTube, several individuals who claimed to be at O'Hare during the event would explain these videos away as hoaxes. So again, where is the real footage? Is it possible that the FAA or United Airlines could swoop in fast enough to confiscate all of the existing photos and videos of the event? Possibly. But the story that surfaced after the O'Hare sighting was that somebody beat everybody else to the punch, using the power of substantial money to gain the footage. Who was that somebody?
Beckman?
The documentary that you put out a few years ago, right? Or
Yes.
about UFOs, correct?
Yes.
So, can you tell me a little bit about it?
Well, it's called Unplugged on UFOs. You can get it at Amazon.com, but I refer your viewers right now to the website MUFON.com, World Wide Web, MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. And also, that's World Wide Web, MUFON.com for where everything that's going on in the area right now of that study, and also StantonFriedman.com, StantonFriedman. The book is called Captured. It's the story of Barney and Betty Hill. They were residents of New England who were abducted in 1963, taken up into a ship, operated upon, and released. And their story is as credible as any I've ever read.
That's right. As a longtime buff of the paranormal, and specifically the world of ufology, shortly after the O'Hare event, Dan Akroyd actually confirmed that he not only had purchased all of the footage of the O'Hare UFO, but that he would be releasing the footage on his forthcoming UFO DVD. And eventually, Aykroyd's plan would change, as he later announced that he would be airing his footage on the Sci-Fi Channel on a UFO show that he was producing called Out There. The UFO community erupted online, viewing this as a massive victory. But it was a victory that would never be realized, as in the 11th hour, Sci-Fi canceled Aykroyd's Out There program unexpectedly and without explanation. So what happened? Why was the show canceled? Because this explanation involves UFOs, the Men in Black, and Britney Spears. I'll let Aykroyd speak for himself.
We sold the show to Sci-Fi Channel, and it was called Out There, and I basically interviewed all of the people that I admired, and I was outside before I knew it was canceled, in between the interviews, and I was outside, and Britney Spears called me because she wanted me to appear on Saturday Night Live with her, and so I was outside having a cigarette. The phone rang. Oh, Brittany, how you doing? Oh, sure, of course I will. I turned away like this. I turned back, and there was a black Ford across the road, a black Ford sedan. And I was trying to look at the plate, and the plate seemed kind of like fuzzy, and I was, definitely a police car. And two guys were there, and a big, tall guy got out of the back seat. And he stood in the street on 42nd Street it was. We were at 42nd Street and 8th Avenue. And he looked right at me. And literally, I was on the phone. Hey, oh, sure, of course I'd like the show. Saw the Ford, went back like this, turned back like a half second later, and it was gone. And that car did not go past me. It did not make a U-turn, because I would have seen 42nd Street. I would have seen that thing take a U-turn and go away. That car vanished. That car was a cloaked vehicle of some type. And whether this was like a warning to me, because the guy got out of the back seat, gave me a real dirty look. That car vanished. I know what I saw. And, it was just this fast. It was, oh, hi, Brittany, sure. Oh, of course, I'd love to. Guy gives me a dirty look. Oh, well, sure. Car gone. That's what happened. And then 2 hours later, we were told we were not to continue taping, and the show was canceled, and none of them would air. I don't know. I don't know. Was that an MIB experience? I don't know. But I do know I did turn back a second later, and it takes so long for an automobile accelerating from 0 to 40 miles an hour to reach the corner of 8th Avenue and 42nd Street going past me, and then pulling a U-turn and going out towards Times Square. I would have seen that car. And I looked around. I was looking for that, then it was gone. So, I don't know. The tapes exist. I have them. We're going to try to repackage them. We might put them out on DVD.
As of today, Aykroyd's footage of whatever was floating around in the air above O'Hare has yet to be released, in which the FAA would eventually explain the entire situation away, once again, by stating that everybody saw nothing more than natural weather phenomena. So I ask you, is Dan Akroyd lying? How about everybody else in the world who's claimed to see a UFO? We're talking astronauts, former congressmen, mayors, governors. So what would it take? What would it take for the idea, the concept that aliens are visiting our planet to become an accepted fact? I'll tell you what I think. I think it would take two things. First and foremost, since governments seem to be the agencies that are covering all of these sightings up, at some point a high-ranking government official, we're talking cabinet level, has to come forward and say, I've seen our UFO files, they're real, they exist, they're here, and the public deserves to know. Well, what if I told you that already happened in May of 2013?
I said, UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying overhead. That gave me the dubious distinction of being the first person of cabinet rank in the G8 group of countries to say so unequivocally. In the 1960s sometime, it was a flotilla of UFOs headed south that crossed into NATO territory in Europe, and the commander-in-chief of the Supreme Allied headquarters in Europe was naturally very shaken. An investigation was launched into this whole subject, and a document was prepared which concluded that at least 4 species had been visiting Earth for thousands of years. And this is my own view at this stage as well. There are live ETs on Earth at this present time, and at least 2 of them probably working with the United States government. I The seventh, the other species that I learned about not too long ago, was called the tall whites. And this is when Paula Harris broke the story just a few years ago. And through her good offices, I had the chance to talk for about 3 hours with former Airman Charles Hall and listen to this absolutely fascinating story of how he was working with, first of all, he was scared out of his skin, but after that, when he got to know them, how he was working with, and finally they became to trust each other and have a good working relationship with the tall whites at the gunnery range at Indian Springs in Nevada. And these tall whites were living on United States Air Force property and working in cooperation with the United States Air Force and sharing technology with them. But just as children survive the idea of the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus when they become adult, I think that tax-paying citizens are quite capable of accepting the new and broader reality that we live in a cosmos teeming with life of various sorts. And the American people and the people of the world have a right to know.
It's pretty staggering testimony, right? I agree. But what would the second thing be? What would the second thing be that's needed for it to be an accepted fact that aliens are in fact visiting our planet? It's obvious, right? The footage. We need the footage. We need the one piece of footage that everybody can point at and go, what the fuck is that? I have no idea. It's got to be an alien, right? We need that. And until that footage exists, it's all going to be testimony. But what if I told you that footage already does exist? Between May and September of 2008, 42-year-old Yausen Yalman, a security guard by trade, filmed the following footage of a UFO, which repeatedly appeared in Turkey off the coast of the Sea of Marmara.
Denize doğru gidiyor değil mi? Şekil değişti. Allah! Şekil değişti Salih.
Both the Science and Technology Research Board of Turkey and Turkey's National Observatory Image Processing Unit concluded that this footage was not a hoax and was in fact authentic.
There was a bright full moon, and below the moon was this little bright spot. We didn't know what it was, and we were filming out over the water. There was no structures in the water. There was no oil platforms. There was no ships going by, and we zoomed in. This camera had a 200 millimeter lens and an electronic doubler, so we were able to get very tight on the leading edge of the craft. The craft, you have to realize, is being lit by the moonlight, which is, as I said, a very bright moon. And then right in the front of the craft, there appeared to be 3 windows, viewing ports, whatever you want to call them. And standing in these viewing ports were typical bumper sticker gray aliens. And I saw this, I mean, I looked through the camera myself, and unfortunately we recorded it. That video went to a university in Istanbul and went over extremely intense scrutiny by the Turkish government, and then the video was also sent to the UK and several other countries for analysis. By the time all that had been done, it had already been on the internet and could absolutely not be suppressed from the public. Recently, this year, the video was given to a analyst in Chile, and he did another review of the film, but this time instead of concentrating on the craft, he concentrated on the occupants. And on my website, alienscalpel.com, you'll see the entire Chilean analysis.
So is it real? Is it all real? Are aliens, extraterrestrial life, visiting our planet? You know, at this point, I don't think I need to convince you of anything. Thank you for watching The Air Above O'Hare.